In May, the government had the second highest borrowing since records began, with only peak COVID in May 2020 being higher.
Sorry, I missed the middle word there, Steve.
I'm
so sorry.
In May, your government borrowed the second highest amount since records began, £17.7 billion you borrowed just in the month of May, and only peak COVID in May 2020 was higher. Do you expect borrowing this year to be higher or in line with forecast at the budget?
Oh, in line with forecasts, and there have been monthly fluctuations, usually for global reasons, as you'll have seen in a number of other countries. But we have also obviously got our overarching fiscal rules in place, which are ironclad. One of them relating to borrowing as a proportion of debt.
So tomorrow we will get both the June figure, but also the figure for your first year in government of how much you've borrowed. You're expecting that to be in line with what was set out in the budget?
Well, I'll see what the figures are tomorrow. And there have been, I think every month this year, there have been fluctuations, broadly driven, and I think generally accepted as driven by events that are happening globally, almost capable of being tracked to them day by day, but I want to be in line with the forecasts. We've got the fiscal rules in place to ensure that we are in line with the forecasts.
Well, the spending decisions you've been talking about weren't global factors, they're national decisions. At the spring statement, the OBR found that there was a £14 billion deterioration in the fiscal forecast, the fiscal outlook from between the budget and the spring statement. Industry analysts are predicting a similar amount of deterioration ahead of the budget. Again, is that something that you would reject?
Well, my experience so far has been of different predictions almost on a weekly basis as we get into the final stages of the budget, which is why I think it's important to see them over a slightly longer term and see what precisely those forecasts are when we get to the autumn. And I don't say that frivolously. I was very concerned only a few weeks ago when the conflict in the Middle East looked like it was going to escalate rather than de-escalate. I was very concerned about the impact that would have on oil prices and on our economy as a result. And therefore, I do think it's important for us to see this over a slightly longer term. We're tracking it, as you would imagine,
people would accept
very,
that
very
slight
closely.
variations. What I'm trying to tease out is whether there's a trend, and you're rejecting, for example, pretty widely accepted industry analysts that there's an expected further deterioration. For example, ING had predicted a further 14 billion. You're saying that's quite wide of the mark.
Well, let's see what the OBR's forecasts are in the autumn.
Right.
As I say, my experience is that those forecasts change on a pretty regular basis, often according to external factors, and trying to guess now what the forecast might be in the autumn is fraught with all sorts of difficulties.
Right. In terms of consistency then, given other things change, is it reasonable to say, with regard to the fiscal headroom that you set out, that as a point of principle, you feel that there should be a reasonable amount of fiscal headroom?
Yes.
And you took measures to restore the headroom in the spring statement. Was that because the fiscal headroom you put in place at the budget was too insufficient?
No, I don't think so. I'd gently point out that the fiscal headroom we put in the budget was considerably more than the last government put in their last budget by some measure. But then there was a lot of fluctuation in the early part of this year, particularly with conflicts in different parts of the world, but also with the immediate after effects of the tariff decisions that were being taken, for example, in America, had an impact. And it was right, in my view and the Chancellor's view, that we retained the fiscal headroom.
Okay, so even though the headroom at the budget was insufficient and you, in my view, rightly took measures at the spring statement to restore it, the OECD are wrong when they said last month, again, pointing to how thin the fiscal headroom is. Again, you feel both industry analysis is incorrect, and you see warnings from the likes of the OECD as incorrect in terms of suggesting it is way too thin.
No, I'm not saying they're incorrect. I'm just saying I think it's important for us to look at it in the round and over the slightly longer period. I do think it's important to have that headroom. which is why we put it in the budget last autumn, and why in the spring statement we took the duty to put that headroom back in, which is what we did.
The OBR found that of 21 forecasts that they have done since 2010, all but one of those was overly optimistic. Are you confident that the OBR forecast and the budget will not be over optimistic this time?
Well, I don't know. I mean, look, that's a matter for the OBR. They make the forecast. They're there for a purpose. And we obviously take what forecast they put in place and act accordingly.
Okay, what I'm interested in is decisions you have taken, for example, on welfare, where the IFS, I think, put the figure to over 3 billion, on winter fuel, where your own government figures put the cost as an additional 1 billion. There will be known pressures from decisions you have taken, which will be coming in the forthcoming budget. And what I'm interested in is the trend of a fiscal headroom which was insufficient, and you've already had to take measures to restore it. Warnings of that and warnings from industry. And again, without getting into writing a budget ahead of October, I'm interested in the trends and whether you're concerned.
No, I mean, I am, Stephen. You've been in this position preparing for budgets, and you will know the experience, which is that there are forecasts that, as you lead into a budget, that in the end come on a weekly basis and fluctuate week to week, literally, and therefore. My experience of the budget and the spring statement is to focus intensely on the forecasts when we get them and prepare for them now according to our fiscal rules, which is what we're doing.
Well, you would accept that the size of gap we're talking about is more than mere fluctuations?
Well, look, back in the autumn, the OBR predicted one thing. By the spring, it predicted something else. By autumn, they will give their prediction going forward from there, and we have to work from that forecast.
But that's been consistent in a deteriorating line. That's the concern. It's not been fluctuating and getting better for some of the time. It's been consistently deteriorating.
Well, different forecast different things. Nobody forecast that we'd have the highest growth in the G7 for the first quarter of this year, but we did. And I'm pleased about that. And I think the measures we're taking can create the conditions in which we can improve on that in the autumn and the budgets thereafter.
Okay. What are your thoughts? Share your personal opinions in the comments below now. Turning to another major headline.
Moving to another significant headline. Tension instantly gripped the room on Boiling Point live on GB News when Nana Acua posed a crucial query. Who will be the one to seize control of leadership in Britain? Starmer, Badenoch, or Farage? Yet, political analyst Fahima Mohammed offered a name nobody anticipated. Horror. Unexpected response left the whole studio speechless. Nana Acua, clearly taken aback, broke into laughter. A moment that perfectly captured the...
I mean, in the 20 years that I was an MP, admittedly I have been an MP now for almost 6 years, but the level of distrust in the police and in the Home Office got stronger and stronger, and not just from the usual suspects. It was actually, dare I say, it was middle class, Tory voting constituents who felt that they were being fobbed off by the police. They don't believe these statistics that say, oh, the amount of crime is actually reduced compared to where it was 30 or 40 years ago. And I think at a day-to-day level, you see it everywhere. You know, as I say, shoplifting, just bits of petty crime, bit of graffiti, nothing getting cleared up by local councils, by everyone else. So I'm not surprised, and I think it's more a sense of despair from the public, thinking that perhaps Nigel Farage is more trusted than other political leaders, but the reality is most people feel that crime is now out of control and that no one's getting a grip on it.
Fahima Mohammed.
You know, these statistics that you say you don't trust, I don't trust the statistics where people claim that they actually believe and, promote Nigel Farage. He's never really been in government or in power or understand the criminal justice. I am vetted and I work within the criminal justice system. I work alongside probation officers and police, and I coach ex-offenders. And these are the experts that do not trust Nigel Farage. These are the people that actually work within the criminal justice and actually understand what's needed and the policies that are there. And no politician is actually doing anything to actually ask the experts. But we do have, the Labour has pledged to put 13,000 more neighbourhood police in the actual streets, which Conservative took away last time, and the Lib Dem Council focuses on preventative measures, which I'm one of them, one of those agencies that do help with rehabilitation and outreach. And these are the kind of things that the real community needs to talk about, not just also that, you know, crime is only with immigrants, when most of it in the UK statistically is homegrown. So we need to look at deeper issues and measures and things that are really going to tackle the problem head on, regardless of where you come from and what you do. Let's just not talk about slogans, but let's talk about real solutions, and that's where we're going to get forward in trusting what needs to be done.
All right, so out of the three leaders, who would you trust the most?
Which three leaders are you talking about?
Okay, let's talk Nigel Farage, because of course he's at the top of the polls, saying that if there was an election today, he would probably win it. That's what the polls are saying. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Or you've got Kemi Badenoch leading the Conservative Party, or of course you've got Sir Keir Starmer, their government in power now. Which one of those would you choose?
I wouldn't choose any of those. Like I said, Lib Dem, probably most likely, or the new people that are coming in, probably with Corbyn, or, you know...
Are you having a laugh? Zara Sultana and Jeremy Corbyn?
They would defund the police, so we'd have nothing left, yes.
Regardless, I just think what's happening now is not working, and Nigel Farage is definitely not the answer either.
But do you not think that that's why the polling is saying for Farage? It's the despair that people have. And, you know, what I find, and I've increasingly found when I was an MP in central London, you know, great pockets of great affluence within Westminster, but there were more and more private security taking over, whether through business improvement districts or indeed through blocks of flats, saying, right, we'll spend a bit of extra money to have additional security nearby, and actually working with the local police to say, you know, if there are drugs being sold openly in the street, which is happening in much of central London at the moment. So it's that sense of despair that is there, and that's quite a dangerous situation. And I think it means that there's less trust in the police, but also less trust in any sense of statistics that are coming out saying, oh, how marvellous everything is.
I just think the system is